Good evening. It is Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. I would like to call to order the monthly meeting of the Urbana Human Relations Commission. Tom, can we have a roll call?
Stacy Burnett, Ann Panthen, Peter Resnick,
Here.
Greg Schroeder,
Here.
Siobhan Gibson.
Here.
We have a bare quorum, so we can go ahead. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion by Ann, a second by Greg. Any additions or changes to the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 3, we have the introduction of a new member. Carla, would you like to introduce us to our new member?
Yes, I would like for the committee members to meet Siobhan Gibson. Siobhan was appointed at the last council meeting, probably about 3 weeks ago. And I will let her tell a little bit about herself, but I know that she's happy to be here. I had a nice conversation with her prior to her appointment and looking forward to her participating on the board, but please feel free to share anything you like about yourself.
Sure. I'm Siobhan Gibson.
You have to turn on your,
It's on.
oh, it's not picking you up very well.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Siobhan Gibson. I am a Urbana resident for 3 years. I've been in the area almost 6. And I am excited to participate. Look forward to working with you all.
Well, welcome. Thanks for
Welcome.
joining us. All right. Item 4 on the agenda, approval of the June 20th, 2023 minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion by Ann, second by Greg. Any discussion, changes, updates to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 5, public participation. Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, unfinished business. The standing unapproved item for KPCS Consulting LLC. Carla, what happened with this one?
Well, after our last meeting and a very robust discussion about KPCS, the board asked me to go back and to have a conversation with leadership, and so I did that. I scheduled a meeting, and I met with leadership and the city contact for KPCS, and I received some information on all of the companies that were vying for the contract that KPCS was vying for, and KPCS was the lowest responsible bid, I believe, and well below the dollar threshold for contract bids that are requiring EEO certification. I didn't have that information coming into the meeting, but in that meeting, they brought us all the information and how they, scored the different ones. And so when I saw that their bid was well below the threshold, I said, you're not required to. And then so I went back and I looked at the manual to make sure. And once I got that information, then we were able to move forward with that. However, I still believe that because of our robust conversation that we had, and from what our previous vice chair stated, in her work, that she's seeing a lot more of the demographic information not being presented, that the commission will probably need to develop some language or start a discussion about updating the ordinance to reflect that, or at least the process for EEO certifications. We're going to need to make some changes.
I guess the only question would be, do you want someone or someone's to start discussing that with you at this point? Do you want to come up with a proposal and let us discuss during a meeting? What do you think is the best way to go forward?
Let me see if I can come up with something, because I need to talk with others, and then I will try to get something developed, and then I'll bring it to the board.
That sounds great. All right, any other discussion about that or questions for Carla? Then we'll go on to item 7, new business. A is our new EEO workforce statistics. We've got 3 vendors up for approval. Just to give Siobhan a little background, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Carla about the process here.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so, but basically, we've got the 3 that are up for approval. Our usual mode is we either approve them for 2 years because we think their statistics are at least sufficient. We approve them for a year or 6 months with a follow-up to ask them for next time more information about their hiring practices, or we disapprove them, which we have never done. So, with that, Carla, do you want to introduce these, or should we just get a motion on the floor?
I can introduce them. We're looking at Koenig Body from Peoria, Illinois. They have 22 employees, 21 white, 1 black. McCann Concrete Products, Dorsey, Illinois. They have 43 employees, 40 white, 3 black. And Rush Truck Centers of Illinois, Champaign, Illinois. They have 36 employees with 34 white, 2 Hispanic. I provided you guys with my recommendations, recommending Koenig for 1 year with a good faith effort update, because they did provide one, but I would say we should ask them for, continued updates. Recommendation for 2 years for McCann Concrete. And I put my rationale down there for you to read. A minority workforce is non-existent in Dorsey, and they're located in Madison County, and it includes many rural areas. And minority workers would have to travel from neighboring communities, and although the company is not located in close proximity to a diverse workforce, they have at least a 7% of their workforce is minority, and that's close to what the county has. So I thought they should get a 2-year recommendation. And then Rush, I recommended them for 2 years because we've had them before, and they were the company that was working to diversify their workforce, and they had developed a plan, and they have been executing that plan, and it's remaining stable, and they appear to be actively focused on diversifying that workforce and making some progress through their conscious efforts.
So, do we have a motion?
Put forth a motion for Koenig Body, 1 year with good faith effort update. McCann Concrete Products, 2 years. Rush Truck Centers of Illinois, 2 years. And I have an item for discussion, but after the motion.
All right, so the motion's on the table. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, so that's a motion by Greg, a second by Ann. Discussion. Greg, go ahead.
I feel that we have maybe siloed our discussions into race-based only, and while construction is historically a very male-dominated industry, these seem very extreme, and I'm wondering if we are having those gender discussions with the companies of 32 male, 4 female, 41 male, 2 female, and
I know that from our office, that's one of the things that they highlight when we're talking with them, is they do highlight their gender. Most companies highlight that. I can't say that they did that. But those are discussions that I know that we actively engage with them when we're saying, because they'll ask us, well, what are you looking for? And so we have those conversations, look at your numbers, not just, how many black people you have or how many Hispanic, but look at your entire workforce and what does your diversity look like?
I just bring it up because while racial demographics are, exclusionary excluding, for the local region, I imagine there is more of a gender ratio balance, so.
And I agree, we have focused a lot on the racial balance. I personally, I look at all of it.
Yeah. Just for consideration and making our recommendations.
And something that our former member Fran used to bring up quite a bit, and I think it's worth looking at regularly and seeing what the responses are. Any other questions or
I have a
discussion?
question.
Yeah, Siobhan.
What kind of recommendations could we make to help them include women in their hiring practices? Because Cohen Company's application, his letter stated that he didn't suggest what sex, but he stated that a lot of times they do training from the schools and they don't want to get dirty. And so what language are we using when we're talking about gender in these hiring practices?
Want to go with that one? Because I know you've had some conversations.
We are regularly just giving them feedback on what they've said to us. And probably as we tailor the language in those letters, we're really taking hints from this group as to what you'd like us to emphasize because so many of the letters are cookie cutter letters to say, here's what's happening, especially if you get a 2 years, congratulations, and so forth. But when we start hearing things like last time, a month ago, we were talking about a company that seemed to be able to hire employees remotely. And so even if certain groups weren't nearby, they could advertise and hire people from all over the country, perhaps. So those types of suggestions go into our language and to give feedback. And in particular, when we see somebody who sends us a good faith efforts update and it seems really vague, we'll come up with maybe 1 or 2 serious questions and maybe 3 or 4 others like follow up to what they actually said in their process. So I guess the idea of when you hear that somebody says some people don't want to work here because they don't want to get dirty, they're saying something to us and we're saying right away, some people think getting dirty is fun when you go to work. So that's, the kind of feedback is either really natural or something that we've heard here that's a new idea or an idea we hadn't thought about lately. So any suggestions that the group has are always taken into consideration, and sometimes they end up verbatim in a letter.
Thank you.
I was going to say, and we also, we try to draw from them because oftentimes they can be siloed in what they think diversity is. And so we say, well, have you done this? Have you outreached to this entity? To try to get them to start thinking about what their good faith efforts could look like and what we're trying to bring out. We're trying to bring out, you're probably doing more than you think you are. And so we do ask the probing questions. We developed some questions based on some really good good faith effort plans. We've borrowed some language from those, and so we kind of use those to help guide others with what are you looking, what we're trying to, what the commission is trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I would just like to say that it looks like when there are women in the companies, they're often office workers. And, and I obviously that counts, but there's no weighted kind of thing, that just because you have, 2 secretaries and a clerk that are women, you're not really getting into the workforce part of it, but I doubt there's any way we can reflect that in our approach.
And I also caution that we can't assume that a boatload of women want to do certain types of jobs or a boatload of men want to do certain types of jobs.
Sure.
We ask them to, what kind of outreach are they doing, but we can't say, you need to get some more women in here or, there's a whole bunch of women out there, because we don't know.
Right, right.
And I try not to assume that every race or every gender wants to do that job, or do they have the skills for that job.
I do think it's reasonable, and sometimes we have, based on really funky-looking statistics, that we'll ask the question and have Carla and Tom in the letter say, hey, we noticed this really weird disparity. Could you let us know what's going on there? Oftentimes, like the case where we see a really funny number and they say, well, we're working with this union and the union is passing along these folks. We're trying to reach out to these schools and maybe, they're not who we think would provide a diverse background. So having us place those questions to staff and having that appear in the letter is sometimes really useful. We'll get a good feedback loop going. So it's worth asking the question even if there's no hard lever to pull.
Right, right. No, I was just making an observation at this point.
Any other discussion?
I was just going to add, as Carla mentioned, we've been sending to some of the companies the good faith efforts examples, and you've seen them. There have been a couple that have come through either as a letter or as a actual booklet here for the commissioners that have been here for a while, that are just like outstanding. You can tell they're proud of what they're doing, and so we've been able to redact that and make it look anonymous and send it out to some of those companies that just aren't sure about where to begin. And hopefully we'll see some more results. But I think we've noticed that because they are working on stronger good faith effort updates, that it's been easier to recommend a longer time period for them in recent months.
Yeah, Greg.
With that, and you're saying the companies are proud of what they've put together, are they authorizing the sharing of that information, even if redacted? Or I'm just wondering if this could somehow come back where they came up with this great strategy and suddenly there's 3 other companies that are recruiting at this point, and it's like, how'd you find out what we were doing?
Well, it's really the kinds of things they're talking about is like we go to universities and we are looking at trade publications that might be in the hands of minority population, things of that sort that are generic, but they're seeing their own results and they're happy to share that they are working at it.
Great, thanks.
I need you to know that.
All right, any other discussion? Good, with that, let me get my motion back up here. We have a motion for Koenig Body for 1 year with Good Faith Efforts update, McCann Concrete Products for 2 years, and Rush Truck Centers for 2 years. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Switching back to my agenda. Oh, yeah. Our second item of new business is leadership elections because it's that time of year. We don't have our current chair here. Do we know whether she's willing to stand again, or do we have any updates in that regard?
I have reached out. I didn't get an answer whether or not she would be here tonight or if she wanted to continue. I just haven't gotten any information yet.
Gotcha. How shall we proceed?
Well, that was a concern of mine.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get that information to find out if she, I'd hate to volunteer for someone who's not here. And then give her but have elections and then not give her the option to say, well, I wanted to do it again. I don't know how to proceed because either way, depending on how she feels, might be an overstep.
Right. Can we table this to next meeting? I think I would need a motion to do so.
I would like to make a motion to table the leadership elections until next meeting.
Do I need a second and a vote on a motion to table? All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Greg, a second by Ann to table leadership elections until the August meeting of the Urbana Human Relations Commission. Any discussion of that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, so that we will have on our agenda for August. And Carla, you'll see if you can get updates from Stacy. And for those of you who are new enough, a reminder that I don't stand for chair for this commission. I'm happy to stand for vice chair if asked, but chair is not something I would like to do. Yes, sir.
Since we are talking about it, outside of the hours of meeting, does the chair and vice chair carry additional duties?
Well, it depends on what's going on with the commission. I try to meet with them regularly. For the other board that I staff, I meet once a week just to keep us up to date on what's going on, things we need to take care of. But basically, there's not a whole lot unless we need to get a signature, and I work with the chair to say, you know, if I need to come to you, I can come to you. But it basically depends on what's going on. Like we had the potential public hearing, so there was some additional duties for that. When we had the 1222G, it was that kind of stuff. It's just administrative stuff. That would be outside of the meeting, but I don't believe it would take additional time than what you're taking for the, much more additional time than what you're taking with the EEO certifications. I try not to put too much time on you guys. I really do.
Thank you.
All right, then moving on to item 8, officers report. Carla.
Formal complaints? None right now. It's like, we did have a couple of informal complaints. One was on housing conditions, and I referred them to the building inspection department. And then one was employment, and there was timeliness of the complaint issue, and they did not meet the prima facie standards for discrimination. And so I did not move forward with that one. Office activity, the City of Urbana booth for Jetty Roads Day were a success. We had a lot of volunteers. We had a lot of conversations with people that were coming up to the booth. I was recruiting heavily for boards. And I had one person, I did email them, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them because they were super excited. But I haven't heard back yet. The office is advertising for a human rights specialist, so if you know anybody, send them to the city website. The job is posted there. And then the office will be represented at the CU Days. We'll be giving away drawstring backpacks with school supplies, and I brought an example of what it looks like. I thought that was pretty slick.
That's nice.
And I love the color. And so we'll be giving those out to students with school supplies in them, and looking forward to that too.
When is CU Days?
Oh, I know you're gonna.
Just generally.
I think it's the 11th of August or the 24th. It's one of those.
Okay.
I can't remember, but I think it's the 11th.
Any other questions regarding
I
the
am
report? Greg?
full of questions tonight.
Excellent.
You're fine.
I was wondering how residents of Urbana find out about the Human Rights Ordinance, their rights. Is that some of the information that you're sharing at these public events? Are there any social media outreach campaigns or?
Question. I haven't gotten into the education component. Been a little lot busy with extra duties. But that is something that I hope to do. When I'm out at the tables, I talk about the human rights ordinance. I share where you can find it, what's in it, some of the things that the office does. So I kind of give a general, but I always point people back to the website where they can get that information.
In the past, we've actually gotten some budget to do some advertising, billboard and bus advertising and stuff like that. We haven't talked about social media, and it would certainly be something that I think would be useful to get the word out. So, I mean, if any of you are interested, but Greg in particular, since you asked the question, please chat with Carla and we can see about developing some stuff. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
I could pull in the community relations person to see, because I know she does our social media. I can have a conversation with her, or you and I can have a conversation with her to see what kind of things we can do. But I know they advertise our board and our office. I don't know how extensive the education piece is. That was something that I had wanted to do when I first came here, but I got kind of busy.
You need a specialist.
I need a specialist to help with that, yes.
I have a question. Is the Urbana census that we're using for the workforce statistics from the U.S. Census from 2020? And is there an inclusion of disability statistics? Will there be an inclusion of disability statistics?
No and yes. What are
Or
you?
the other way around, I think.
I'll let Tom do he does the statistics, so I'll let Tom speak.
Yes, that's, as Pete just mentioned, it's probably yes and no. It would be the answers. So these statistics in the blue line on the chart that the commissioners have are specifically from the city of Urbana census in 2020. The beige or yellow line is the workforce statistics come from Champaign County, and that's through 2018 is the most recent one that they have shared with us. So as far as disability goes, I probably would be interested in hearing more about what you'd like to see, but I have not, they did not offer it in this specific report. I mean, which I was able to take a report and almost put it on this chart exactly the way they shared it with us. And so if there are other things that are on the census, I haven't seen that report for Champaign or for the city of Urbana yet.
So it's likely that are not collecting data to see if they're employed people that acknowledge disability.
I think you're correct. Unless somebody remembers seeing a question on a census, and I don't remember that this 2020 census had, some census years have longer forms for a certain percentage of houses, and I don't remember if that occurred with the past census or not. I just don't know that myself off the top of my head.
When will the Urbana do their next?
I know there's some ongoing discussion. I don't think it's been formally approved specifically yet. I think it's still in discussion form. I'm supposed to know in the next meeting or later, and probably late this month. But they're talking about doing one during the spring of 2024 to try to do certain neighborhoods in Urbana to get a more accurate account compared to what they felt was a lower count due to COVID near the university population in particular, where lots of blocks just emptied out. So they're hopeful to review that and see if, but that's got to be approved through city council, is my understanding.
Can the commission request that disability be added to the census so that we can collect that data?
We can request it. I can't guarantee it'll be able to be on there, but we can definitely request it.
Thank you.
I think this is really interesting, and maybe, excuse me, something we could add to the workforce statistics form that we give out to potential contracts, because we've never collected that information or really looked at it. You know, asking for that kind of diversity. Obviously, there are limits with regard to ADA and what they can ask of employees, but, I mean, you're talking about employees that want to volunteer that information. That might be a really interesting thing and would have to be carefully worded to comply, but that would be great information for us to look at and say, hey, you know, you're doing great about recruiting people who have disabilities or in areas where that kind of availability would be good.
I would want to check with, especially with like the ADA. I work with the Great Lakes ADA Center. I would want to check with them because they work with municipalities. I just want to make sure how we can ask that, especially on our applications for EEO. I just want to make sure we're in compliance, because I'd hate to have to, because from the training that I got, it's prohibitive of asking people about
Right.
So I just want to make sure we can do that, and if we can, how?
I think that's a really great idea, thanks. We've never done that before.
The,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ann.
the letters or the responses that the companies provide often say, excuse me, that they promote qualified members of legally protected groups, and it includes disabled, physically and mentally handicapped, disabled veterans, veterans of Vietnam, and old people. So the companies themselves are saying they, you know, mine those people in the workforce, but, you know, we don't use that in any way. So, you know, it's, the concept is out there. I don't think it would be too much to ask or to add it into our questions, but, you know, you'd have to sure know what we were doing about that. But it's part of most companies, you know, good faith efforts and all that kind of stuff, I think, if you go through and look at the letters.
Well, most companies, they can't discriminate against people because they have a disability, and I think that's their standard in their EEO statements. That's
Yes.
the standard.
Yes.
But my concern is asking them, do you have people with disabilities?
Yeah,
That might be my concern, because they can't ask it and we're asking them to ask it.
right.
So that's
Right,
where
right.
I'm like, we need to make sure.
I do know, like, some applications do ask for, like, people to say what race they are, and they do ask if you have a disability. So there's some companies that might have that information. I'm just wondering, when we talk about equity and we're including gender, if there's possibility of including disabilities.
I know companies, they collect that data, but I'm just not sure if they're able to utilize that data. I'm going to ask,
Thank you.
because I'll follow up just to make sure, because I want to make sure if whatever we decide to change, we're in compliance.
And, you know, if, we've got in our ordinance, of course, a slew of different categories. If it's plausible, maybe not in a section where we could say, you're required to collect these numbers, please tell us what they are, but a separate section that might say, what efforts are you making, or do you have numbers that correspond to other classes of people who are traditionally discriminated against, and allow them to lay that out and give them examples like disability or, you know, source of income, other things like that. Might be an interesting way to gather some additional data that we don't get to see normally.
Yeah, qualitative's safer than quantitative.
Very cool. Anything else on the officer's report?
Nope, that's it.
One question for you, on the 1222G report, do we know when that's gonna be to city council, when we have to get, I know I'm behind and haven't submitted my report yet, when that all is gonna happen?
We don't have a date, because I was under the belief that everyone was going to submit it, and you guys were going to talk about how best.
They were all submitted.
Once they're all submitted, how best to present that to the council.
Okay, if you could get that discussion on for next month's agenda, so we remind ourselves that
Okay.
we have to decide how that's gonna go, that would be good, and give me a little kick in the pants to do my report as well.
And once you designate who is going to go to the council with me, then we can work together on putting together a presentation.
Comment on that? So if we are having the internal discussion before it goes to city council, I know we have lost at least one investigator. Okay. Who is going to discuss those two reports? And were they completed?
Yes.
Okay.
They were completed, and so we can bring those to the table.
Okay.
They were thorough enough to, you understand what they were,
What the findings were.
what their findings were.
Okay, so we'll have that on the agenda for next month.
I just wanted to first,
I was gonna ask.
for
Oh,
Siobhan.
sorry.
1222G, those are complaints that a citizen may, or a resident may have against an employee of the city. Those can't come to me because I'm an employee, and they may actually be against me. And so those go directly to the commission. The chair gets those, gathers those, and then they assign them to the commissioners to investigate and then to bring back their findings and their recommendations. The recommendations go to the mayor, and then it gives her a chance to, gives the mayor a chance to look at the report, do some follow-up, and that kind of thing. But ultimately, myself and a representative of the board goes before the commission to submit, to present that information to them.
Thank you.
And so we had a handful of them after that piece of the ordinance was added, and we've been slowly gathering those reports together. So we've got a couple in the queue right now that we're getting together.
Are the current bylaws that had to be updated because of that, the ones available online?
Yes,
Okay.
you'll be able to find all that on, we keep the, have you been able to go to the website? We try to keep that updated so that we have the most current information available to you. And Mr. Schroeder's question was that, is the most available current information, and it is.
For those of us that want to review them.
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's it for the officer's report. Any announcements? All right, the two on the agenda, we have our next scheduled meeting, which is going to be Tuesday, August 15th, back at the normal 5:30 p.m. And then the September meeting is September 19th, also at 5:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. Having no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.